Welcome to Soulwoven, where every story is crafted to heal, inspire, and lift the spirit. Subscribe to Soulwoven, and let every story remind you, healing begins with connection.
The nurse who lost everything met the man who'd already lost it all. Elena Morrison hadn't cried in 8 months. Not at the funeral, not when she packed up the nursery, not when she signed the divorce papers 3 weeks after burying her daughter. But there she was, at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, sitting in her car outside County General Hospital, sobbing so hard she couldn't catch her breath. The night shift was about to start. 32 patients needed her, and she couldn't make her hands stop shaking long enough to open the car door. That's when someone tapped on her window. 020. This is the story of how 2 people who'd forgotten how to live learned to breathe again, together. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world you are tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. The face in the window belonged to a man about her age, maybe 35, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much. Dark circles underneath. The practiced stillness of someone who'd learned not to startle easily. Elena rolled down her window halfway, wiping frantically at her face. "I'm fine," she said automatically. "Okay." He didn't move, just stood there in the parking lot, fluorescence, hands in the pockets of worn jeans. "I believe you." Something about the way he said it, no judgment, no prying, made her throat tighten again. "I work here," she managed. "Night shift. I'm about to go in." "I know." He shifted slightly. "I'm Marcus Reeves. I'm the new janitor. Started last week. 3rd floor. Elena blinked. She'd been so submerged in her own fog that she hadn't noticed anyone new. Hadn't noticed much of anything, really. "You've been crying in your car for 20 minutes, Marcus said quietly. "I wasn't sure if I should." He stopped. "I lost someone too, a while back. And I remember thinking that if I could just sit in my truck long enough, maybe I wouldn't have to face another day pretending I was okay." The words hung between them like a bridge neither had asked for. "What made you get out?" Elena heard herself ask. Marcus's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "My kids were in the back seat. They were 6 and 4, and I realized they were scared. Not of what we'd lost, but of losing me too." Elena nodded slowly. She understood that fear, had seen it in her ex-husband's eyes before he couldn't take it anymore, and left. "How old now?" 12 and 10. Sophie and Oliver. When he said their names, his whole face softened. "They're the reason I get up. The reason I keep moving." "I don't have a reason anymore," Elena whispered. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Maybe you just haven't found the next one yet." He stepped back from the car. "Your shift starts in 7 minutes. I'll be on 3 if you need anything. Coffee machine on our floor actually works, unlike the one on 2. Then he walked away, leaving Elena alone with the first tiny spark of something that wasn't numbness she'd felt in months. She got out of the car. The thing about night shifts is that they exist in their own pocket universe. Regular rules don't apply. People are more honest when the sun isn't watching. Elena saw Marcus every night after that, always on the 3rd floor, methodically working his way through rooms with a thoroughness that spoke of military training, or maybe just someone who needed to keep his hands busy. For the first week, they just nodded at each other. The second week, he started leaving a fresh coffee on the nurse's station counter around 3 a.m., right when the exhaustion hit hardest. "Black. 2 sugars," he'd say, not looking up from mopping. "Saw you making it that way in the break room." "Thank you," Elena would reply, and that was enough. Week 3, she found him sitting in the family waiting area, head in his hands, at 4 a.m. "Bad night?" she asked softly. He looked up. His eyes were red. "Anniversary. 4 years today since—" He stopped. Started again. Since my wife died. Eleanor sat down 2 chairs away, close enough to be present, far enough to give space. Ovarian cancer, Marcus said into the quiet. Diagnosed at stage 4, gone in 6 months. She was 31. I'm so sorry. Everyone's sorry, and I know they mean it. But sorry doesn't, his voice cracked. Sorry doesn't make it hurt less. Eleanor understood that too. The well-meaning condolences that felt like tiny paper cuts, each one insignificant, but adding up to bleeding out. My daughter was 18 months old, she heard herself say. Grace. She had a congenital heart defect we didn't know about. We put her down for a nap and she didn't wake up. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of all the things that couldn't be said. That's why you're here, Marcus said finally. In pediatrics. Eleanor nodded. I transferred 6 months ago. Thought maybe if I could save other people's kids. She stopped. Doesn't work that way, does it? No, but that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. They sat together until Elena's break ended, not speaking, just breathing in the same space. It was the first time Elena had told anyone but her therapist about Grace. The first time she'd said her daughter's name out loud in months. The weeks turned into something resembling friendship. Marcus would take his break when Elena took hers, and they'd sit in that same waiting area, drinking terrible vending machine coffee and talking about everything and nothing. She learned that he'd been a teacher before. History, high school level. That he'd taken the janitorial job because it had better hours for single parenting and didn't require him to be on all the time. Can't fake it in front of teenagers, he said. They smell bullshit a mile away, and I was drowning. Couldn't show up for them when I could barely show up for myself. You gave up teaching for your kids, Elena said slowly. That's not noble, just necessary. Marcus shrugged. Sophie was having panic attacks. Oliver stopped talking for almost a year. They needed me present, not just physically there. This job lets me pick them up from school, be home for dinner, help with homework, actually know what's happening in their lives. Eleanor felt something crack open in her chest. This man had lost everything too, but he'd kept going, kept choosing his kids every single day. Do they ask about her, your wife? All the time. We have this thing. Friday nights, we look at pictures and tell stories about her. Make sure they remember. His voice softened. At first it killed me, but now it's how we keep her with us. My ex couldn't do that, Elena said quietly. Couldn't even keep Grace's pictures up. Said it hurt too much. That's why he's your ex. Part of it. But mostly, she paused, choosing words carefully. He blamed me. I was a nurse. I should have known something was wrong. Should have seen signs. Should have saved her. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's not fair. No. But grief isn't fair either. They sat with that truth until the sky started lightening outside the windows. One night in October, Marcus brought something wrapped in newspaper to their usual spot. Oliver made this in art class, he said, carefully unwrapping a clay sculpture. It was abstract, maybe a bird, maybe just feeling given shape, glazed in deep blues and greens. He wanted you to have it, said you have sad eyes like his dad used to, and this helped him feel better when he made it. Elena took the sculpture with trembling hands. Marcus, I can't. He specifically asked me to give it to you. Apparently you helped his classmate's mum last month. The kid with the broken arm. You stayed 2 hours past your shift to make sure everything was okay. Elena remembered. The mother had been a mess, and the little boy kept asking for his dad who was deployed overseas. She'd sat with them, called in favors to get them moved up the queue, made sure they had everything they needed. That's just my job. No, your job is treating injuries. You gave them comfort. Marcus's voice was gentle. Oliver noticed, and he wanted to do the same for you. Eleanor felt tears burning behind her eyes, the good kind, the kind that meant something was thawing. Would it be weird if I said thank you to him? Maybe wrote him a note? Marcus smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. He'd love that, but he hesitated. Actually, I was wondering if maybe you'd want to meet them. Not in some weird pressure way. Just, Sophie's been asking who I talk to on my breaks, and I think it might be good for them to see that their dad has... He stopped, started again. That I have a friend. Friend. The words settled between them like something fragile and precious. I'd like that, Elena said. Elena met the Reeves kids on a Sunday afternoon in November at a park halfway between their apartments. She'd almost cancelled 3 times, terrified of somehow damaging these children who'd already lost so much. But then she saw Marcus standing by the playground, flanked by 2 kids who had his dark eyes and his careful posture, and something in her chest just opened. "You must be Sophie and Oliver," she said, crouching down to their level. Oliver, small for 10, clutched a sketchbook to his chest. "You're Elena, the nurse. Dad says you work really hard." "Your dad works hard too." Elena smiled at him. "Thank you for the sculpture. It's on my nightstand. First thing I see every morning." His whole face lit up. Sophie, 12 and clearly the protector, studied Elena with an intensity that was almost unsettling. "Did your kid die too?" "Sophie!" Marcus's voice was sharp. But Elena shook her head. "It's okay." She met Sophie's eyes directly. "Yes, my daughter Grace died. She was very little, only 18 months. That's really sad." "It is really sad. The saddest thing that ever happened to me." "Dad cries sometimes," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "When he thinks we're asleep. Does that mean he doesn't love us enough?" Eleanor's throat tightened. She glanced at Marcus, saw him frozen, clearly not knowing how to answer. "No," Eleanor said firmly. "It means he misses your mum so much that sometimes the missing spills over. But I bet he also laughs with you, and makes you breakfast, and helps with homework, and shows up to every single thing that matters to you." Sophie considered this. "Yeah, he does. That's love. The crying is just... It's proof that your mum mattered so much that part of your dad will always wish she was still here. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for all of you in his heart." Oliver had drifted closer. "Do you cry?" "Sometimes. Not as much as I used to. But your dad helped with that." "How?" Eleanor looked at Marcus, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. "He reminded me that even when things are really, really hard, there are still reasons to keep going. And sometimes those reasons are people who need you. Like us," Oliver said simply. "We need Dad." "Like you," Elena agreed. They spent 2 hours at the park. Sophie challenged Elena to a race across the monkey bars and won decisively. Oliver showed her his sketchbook, page after page of intricate drawings, mostly birds and landscapes, each one signed with a tiny heart. "These are incredible," Elena breathed. "He's going to be a famous artist," Sophie declared, "and I'm going to be a lawyer so I can protect him from people who try to steal his work." "A lawyer needs to know how to argue," Marcus said dryly. "You've got a head start." Sophie stuck her tongue out at him, and they all laughed. Easy, natural, like they'd done this 100 times before. As the sun started to set, Oliver tugged on Elena's sleeve. "Will you come to my art show? At school. It's in 2 weeks." Elena felt Marcus's eyes on her, giving her an out if she needed one. "I would love to," she said, and she meant it. The art show led to a Saturday morning breakfast, which led to Eleanor helping Sophie study for a social studies test, which led to Marcus showing up at the hospital with homemade soup when Eleanor mentioned she was fighting off a cold. Slowly, without either of them planning it, their lives started weaving together. But it wasn't simple. One night in December, Elena had a patient code on her, a 7-year-old with heart complications. They got him back, but Elena spent her break in the bathroom, hyperventilating, seeing Grace's face on that little boy. Marcus found her an hour later, still shaking. "I can't do this," she whispered. I thought I could, but every time something goes wrong, You saved him. This time. But what about next time? What if... Marcus pulled her into a hug, and Eleanor finally broke, sobbing into his shoulder while he held her steady. I can't lose anyone else, she gasped. I can't let people in just to watch them leave. I know. Marcus's voice was rough. But Elena, you're already in. With me. With my kids. We're already here. And that was the terrifying truth of it. Somewhere between midnight coffee and Sunday park visits, she'd started caring again. Started hoping. Started loving. What if I mess it up? She asked. What if I'm not enough? What if you are? Marcus pulled back just enough to look at her. What if this is exactly what all four of us need? Elena wanted to believe him, but the fear was a living thing in her chest. I need time, she said finally. Okay. No hesitation. Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere. But time had a way of forcing decisions. 2 weeks later, Sophie showed up at the hospital, alone, at 7 p.m. Eleanor was just starting her shift when she spotted the girl in the emergency room waiting area, trying not to cry. Sophie? What's wrong? Where's your dad? Home with Oliver. He had a fever and Dad didn't want to leave him, but Sophie's voice broke. I got in a fight at school and the principal called and Dad sounded so disappointed and I just ran. I didn't know where else to go. Elena's heart cracked clean open. Come here. She pulled the girl into a hug, and Sophie crumpled, 12 years old and trying so hard to be strong all the time. I hit a kid who said my mum probably died because she didn't love us enough to fight harder, Sophie sobbed. And I know violence isn't the answer, but I was so mad and Oh, sweetheart. Of course you were mad. That was a horrible thing for that kid to say. Dad's going to be so upset. He teaches us to use our words, and I didn't, and now, Eleanor said firmly. We're going to call your dad and let him know you're safe. And then, we're going to figure this out together. Okay? Marcus answered on the first ring, voice tight with worry. Sophie. She's with me at County General. She's safe. Can you bring Oliver? We should talk. 20 minutes later, they were all in the family counselling room that Eleanor had requisitioned. Oliver's fever had broken, and he kept his head on Marcus's shoulder while Sophie stared at her shoes. I'm sorry, Sophie whispered. I know, Marcus said, but we need to talk about what happened. What followed was messy and honest. Sophie crying about how hard it was to hear kids talk about their mums, while she couldn't even remember her mother's voice anymore. Oliver admitting he was scared all the time that something would happen to their dad. Marcus breaking down as he tried to explain that he was doing his best, but he wasn't enough. Couldn't be both parents, couldn't fill all the holes. And Elena, watching this family she'd somehow become part of, realized something crucial. You're not supposed to fill all the holes, she said quietly. Nobody can do that. The holes they're proof that your mum existed, that she mattered, and trying to fill them is like trying to erase her. Marcus looked at her, eyes red. Then what do? We live with them. We build around them. Eleanor's voice caught. We let other people in, even though it's terrifying. We make room for new love without erasing the old. Is that what you want? Marcus asked. To be let in? Elena looked at these three people, this broken, beautiful family, and felt the fear, but underneath it, something stronger. Yes, she said. I'm terrified, but yes. 3 months later, in March, Marcus asked Eleanor to meet him at the hospital parking lot. Their spot. Where it all started. She found him standing by her car, hands in his pockets, looking nervous. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Nothing's wrong. He pulled something from his pocket, a small box. I want to do this here, where you taught me that broken things can still be whole. Elena's breath caught. I'm not going to pretend this is a fairy tale, Marcus said. We're both carrying losses that will never completely heal. We have bad days. We have kids who need stability and careful handling. We have jobs that drain us and histories that haunt us. Marcus, but Eleanor, you make me want to wake up. Not just for my kids, but for me. For us. You make me believe that loving again isn't betraying what I lost. It's honoring it. His voice shook. Sophie and Oliver love you. They light up when you're around. And I. He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring with a small blue stone. This isn't about replacing what we've lost. It's about building something new from all our broken pieces. Will you marry me? Will you choose this messy, complicated, beautiful life with us? Eleanor felt tears streaming down her face. The good kind, the healing kind. I'm going to mess up, she said. I'm going to have days where I can't stop seeing Grace, where I pull away because I'm scared. I know. I'm going to need you to be patient with me, to remind me that it's okay to be happy again. I know that too. And your kids, our kids, they have to come first, always. They already do, but Elena, you're part of that now. You're part of us. She looked at this man who'd found her sobbing in a parking lot and refused to let her drown, who'd shown her that grief and joy could exist in the same heart, who'd given her a reason to keep going. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. He slid the ring on her finger, and they stood there, holding each other in the place where everything had changed, while the night shift started around them and life kept moving forward. When they told Sophie and Oliver that weekend, Oliver handed Eleanor a drawing he'd made, all four of them holding hands, rendered in careful coloured pencil. For when you forget we're a family now, he said simply. Sophie, trying to be cool and failing, hugged Elena so hard they both nearly fell over. Does this mean I can call you Mom? Or is that weird? It might be weird. Eleanor's heart cracked open one more time. You can call me whatever feels right to you. There's no rush. Okay. But, Eleanor, I'm really glad Dad found you. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. 6 months later, they had a small wedding in the same park where they'd first met all together. Elena wore a simple dress. Marcus cried through his vows. Sophie and Oliver stood up as their attendants, beaming, and when the officiant asked if anyone objected, Oliver raised his hand. What's wrong? Marcus asked, panicking slightly. Nothing. I just wanted to say... Oliver looked at Eleanor. I drew a picture of my mum and put it in my pocket today, so she could be here too. Is that okay? Elena knelt down in her wedding dress, not caring about the grass stains. That's more than okay. That's perfect. That night, in the house they'd rented together, big enough for all of them, with a yard for Oliver to play in, and a porch where Marcus and Elena could drink coffee and watch the sunrise. They started their first tradition as a married family. They looked at pictures. Oliver's drawings of his mother, photos of Grace that Elena had finally unpacked from storage. Marcus told stories about his wife's terrible singing voice and how she burned everything she cooked, but made the best pancakes somehow. Elena talked about how Grace used to laugh, this full-belly giggle that could make anyone smile. They would have liked each other, Sophie said thoughtfully. Your daughter and our mum. Yeah, Elena agreed softly. I think they would have. And somehow, in that moment, with all their lost, loves acknowledged and honoured, the grief felt a little lighter. The broken pieces didn't disappear, but they'd built something whole anyway. Some people say you can't build a life on shared grief, that foundations need to be stronger than loss. But they're wrong. The strongest foundations are built by people who've weathered storms and chosen to stand again, who've lost everything and decided that maybe, just maybe, there's room for something new alongside the old. Elena and Marcus didn't erase their pasts. They wove them into their future, carefully, honestly, with all the love their broken hearts could hold. And that's the thing about broken hearts. They have more room to let people in. If this story reminded you that it's possible to love again after devastating loss, share it with someone who needs to hear that healing doesn't mean forgetting, that you can honor what you've lost while embracing what you've found. Subscribe to Soulwoven for more stories that remind you courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing love anyway, even when you're terrified, even when you've already lost everything once before. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be found.